Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. Look, Mr. Thompson, I've already sold everything I could. All that's left in my house is dust, bills to pay, and my pig, Baxter. Can't you give me just a little more time? The bank manager let out a deep sigh for the fourth time. Mrs. Harper, you've already had 3 extensions, but in my defense, I only used 2 of them responsibly. The third was because the kitchen roof fell right on my head, and I thought I deserved a little emotional break. Mr. Thompson adjusted his glasses with the kind of patience that made it clear he really wanted a kick-out client button on his desk. The rule is simple. If the debt isn't paid within 30 days, the property goes to auction. Amelia swallowed hard. 30 days? 30 days? In 30 days, not even a cactus blooms. Do you expect me to bloom money out here in the middle of the desert? The manager cleared his throat, growing impatient. She tilted her head, a bit more bold. Tell me, Mr. Thompson, doesn't the bank have a heart? Not even a tiny piece hidden in a vault somewhere next to the gold bars? Don't joke about that, Mrs. Harper. This is not a laughing matter. Look, I know the bank is a business, not a charity, but you have a heart, don't you? This house is all I have left of George, but it didn't matter. The papers in front of her were cold as stone. The signatures were already there, like dried wounds. The final deadline was written in bold. 30 days. Money or the house, Mrs. Harper. Amelia stood up slowly, straightened her skirt, and looked him straight in the eye. Well, just so you know, Mr. Thompson, when I get rich, and I will, even if I have to win the church ladies' bingo, I'm going to buy this bank. And the first thing I'll do is fix this lobby because it's just plain ugly. She walked out like she was about to storm Normandy, ignoring the other customers' looks and the manager's voice calling behind her. 30 days. Mrs. Harper. Not one more. Outside, Amelia crossed her arms, took a deep breath, and mumbled, "All right. Let's see. I've got a house falling apart, a stove that only works if you hit it with a wooden spoon, a pig who thinks he's a dog, and now a 30-day deadline before I'm sleeping on the street. Wonderful." She walked quickly across the town square, her heart racing and her head spinning. As she passed by the barber shop, 2 men were talking in low voices, not low enough to escape Amelia's sharp ears. They say that Apache up in the hills is looking for help. The rich one, that's him, Navajo Storm Rider. Word is, he's hiring. Amelia stopped in her tracks. Wait. What? One of the men, surprised by the interruption, looked up. What? You said Navajo Storm Rider? Yeah, he's expanding his ranch. Looks like he needs workers. His land's growing faster than weeds in the rain, but he's a strange one, quieter than a cactus. Amelia narrowed her eyes. Curious. Does he hire women? Don't know. Would he take someone broke with an expired high school diploma and an undeniable talent for making cornmeal cake? The other man laughed, a bit confused. Ma'am, at this point, he'd probably hire a crow to take care of the horses. Amelia took 2 steps back, eyes fixed on the horizon where the hills began to rise at the end of the road. Navajo Storm Rider. Amelia frowned. She'd heard that name before. A reclusive man, not much of a talker, but with a lot of zeros in the bank. He owned so much land it practically circled the whole county. People said he was mysterious, maybe even dangerous. Some called him a ruthless Apache. Others said he was a war hero who came back with a broken heart and a fortune no one could explain. All Amelia knew was, if there was work, she needed it. Head held high, pride buried under desperation. She whispered to herself before leaving the square, "Whatever, doesn't matter who he is. If there's a job, I'm going. And if it's this Navajo guy, well, he better be ready because this unlucky widow is showing up at his door, and in heels if I have to." And so she went toward the property of a man she had never seen. The road leading to Navajo Storm Rider's ranch seemed to stretch on forever. Amelia had been walking for over an hour with the Arizona sun burning her back and her feet aching inside shoes that had seen better days. Her navy blue dress, the most decent one left in her shrinking wardrobe, was dusty and sticking to her skin. "All right, Amelia," she murmured to herself, wiping the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. "You decided to go look for a job with a man who lives at the end of the world. If he turns out to be a serial killer, at least no one will hear your screams." When she finally spotted the property, Amelia stopped and let out a low whistle. Navajo Storm Rider's ranch wasn't just big. It was impressive. Well-kept fences stretched as far as the eye could see. Purebred horses grazed peacefully, and the main house was a solid wood and stone building that looked like it came out of a magazine. "Well, if he kills me, at least it'll be in a beautiful place," she said, fixing her hair and taking a deep breath. Amelia walked down the dirt road until she reached the main gate. There was no doorbell, so she clapped her hands a few times, feeling a bit ridiculous. "Hello? Anyone there? I'm Amelia Harper, and I'm here looking for a job. I promise I'm not selling encyclopedias or representing any church." For a few minutes, only the wind answered. Then she heard footsteps approaching, steady, slow, like someone who's never in a hurry. When Navajo Storm Rider appeared, Amelia felt like someone had punched the air out of her lungs. The man was tall with broad shoulders that filled out a white cotton shirt. His black hair was tied back in a low ponytail, and his dark eyes studied her with an intensity that made her feel like an open book. He didn't say a word. He just looked at her. Amelia cleared her throat, trying to pull herself together. "Hi, you must be Mr. Storm Rider. I'm Amelia Harper. I heard you're hiring, and well, I really need a job." Navajo crossed his arms, still silent. Amelia started feeling like she was being judged by a very strict judge. "Look, I know it might seem strange for a woman to show up out of nowhere, but I'm a hard worker. I'm honest, and I make a cornmeal cake that could bring the dead back to life. Not literally, of course. That would be creepy." One corner of Navajo's mouth turned up, just barely. "Come in," he said at last, opening the gate. Amelia followed him through the property, trying not to look too impressed. The place was run like a Swiss watch. The stables were spotless, the cattle well fed, and there was even a garden that made her own backyard look like a plant graveyard. "Wow, what a beautiful place," she said. "I bet you don't have any cockroaches that refuse to die." Navajo led her up to the front porch of the main house and motioned for her to sit in one of the rocking chairs. He stayed standing, leaning against a wooden post. "Why do you need work?" he asked, straight to the point. Amelia sighed, deciding honesty was her best bet. "My husband died 2 years ago and left me with more debt than dreams. The bank wants to take my house in 30 days if I don't pay it all off. I've sold everything I could, tried everything, and now I'm here begging for a chance to clean stables, cook, do laundry, anything." She paused and gave a crooked smile. "I'll even take care of angry animals, plant in dirt drier than anything Moses ever saw, or talk to lonely horses. I'm a great listener, especially when I'm desperate." Navajo watched her for a long moment. There was something in his eyes she couldn't quite read. Maybe sympathy, maybe interest. "Do you have family?" "Just me and my stubbornness. Oh, and a pig who thinks he's a dog, but he doesn't help with the bills. No children?" Amelia felt a sharp pain in her chest. That question always hurt. "No. George and we tried, but it never happened. Maybe it's for the best, considering the financial mess he left behind." Navajo nodded slowly, like he was thinking through every word. Then he stepped in front of her, looking her straight in the eye. "You said you'd take any kind of job, any honest job that doesn't involve wrestling bears. What if I offered something better than cleaning stables?" Amelia frowned, confused. "Better how?" "Because honestly, at this point in my life, cleaning stables would feel like hitting the jackpot." Navajo took a deep breath, like he was about to jump off a cliff. "If you need money that badly, I have a better offer." "I'm listening," she said, leaning forward, curious. The silence that followed felt like forever. Navajo looked out toward the horizon, then at his own hands, and finally back at her. "I'll give you half of my land if you give me a child." Amelia blinked once, then twice. She was sure she had heard him wrong. "Sorry, could you repeat that?" Because I swear I just heard you say something completely crazy. You heard right. Amelia stood up so quickly that the rocking chair behind her shook violently. Her face went through at least 3 shades of red before she could get a word out. You just proposed what exactly? A deal? Said Navajo, with the same calm tone someone would use to offer sugar for coffee. Half of my land in exchange for an heir. Amelia opened and closed her mouth several times, like a fish out of water. You're serious? Completely. She turned, took 2 steps toward the door, stopped, turned back toward him, and pointed an accusing finger. I walked all the way here under the scorching sun, and this is the kind of crazy proposal you have for me. It's not crazy. It's practical. Practical? You think I'm what? A walking womb with legs? Navajo didn't flinch at her outburst. In fact, he seemed to be expecting exactly this reaction. You need money. I need an heir. It's a solution that benefits us both. Amelia laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh people let out when they think they're losing their mind. Oh, wonderful. So romantic. What a charming offer. You must be very popular with the ladies in town. I don't usually go into town. I can imagine why, she replied sarcastically. With those social skills, you must be the king of the local dances. Navajo crossed his arms again, looking slightly amused by her outrage. It's a generous offer. Generous? Amelia put her hands on her hips. Do you even know how much half of this land is worth? I do. That's why I'm offering it. And you think that any woman would agree to something like this? Would you? The question caught her off guard. Amelia opened her mouth to give an outraged answer, but nothing came out because, deep down, a small, treacherous part of her mind was doing the math. Half that land was worth more than she had ever dreamed of owning in her entire life. She stammered. Think about it, Navajo said, heading to the door. You have 1 week to decide. 1 week, she nearly shouted. You make me this insane offer and give me a week to decide? It's enough time to completely lose my mind, maybe. Navajo stopped at the door and turned to her one last time. The gate will be open if you decide to come back. And then he went inside, leaving Amelia alone on the porch with her heart racing, her mind spinning, and the absolute certainty that her life had just gotten even more complicated than she ever thought possible. The walk back home felt even longer than the trip there. Amelia walked slowly, her feet aching, her thoughts spinning like a top out of control. With each step, Navajo's words echoed in her mind. I'll give you half of my land if you give me a child. That man is crazy, she muttered, kicking a rock in the middle of the road. Who even says something like that? It's like he stepped right out of one of those cheap romance novels the church ladies read in secret. She stopped in the middle of the road and looked up at the sky, as if expecting some divine answer to drop from the endless Arizona blue. Lord, I know life has its cruel little jokes, but this is getting out of hand. First, George dies and leaves me with more debt than a politician in election year. Now, a rich Apache shows up, offering me half a kingdom in exchange for... She shook her head, unable to finish the sentence out loud. This has to be some kind of cosmic test, or maybe I hit my head, and now I'm hallucinating. When she finally reached her property, Amelia stopped at the gate and let out a long sigh. The house looked even more run down after seeing Navajo's perfect ranch, the peeling paint, the missing roof tiles, the fence that looked more like a crooked smile. Home, sweet home, she said to herself dryly, where glamour is optional and poverty is guaranteed. But as she got closer to the front door, she froze. A man in a dark suit was standing there, holding a leather briefcase and checking a pocket watch, with the impatience of someone who had more important places to be. Mrs. Harper? He asked, looking up as she approached. That's me, Amelia answered, already feeling a bad feeling in her gut. And you are? Henry Sullivan, bank officer. I need to speak with you about your property. Amelia felt the blood freeze in her veins. A bank officer never showed up at your door to deliver good news. Did Mr. Thompson send me a gift? She asked, trying to keep her tone light, though her voice trembled slightly. Because if it's a fruit basket, I can tell you right now, I'll accept it. Sullivan didn't smile. He opened his briefcase and pulled out some documents. I'm afraid I have to inform you that the timeline for settling your debt has changed. The situation has become more urgent. More urgent? How? Amelia swallowed hard because 30 days was already tight. If you want less than that, you'll have to invent some new days of the week. The deadline has been reduced to 2 weeks. Mrs. Harper. Amelia's legs nearly gave out. She leaned against the door frame, feeling like the world had suddenly started spinning faster. Excuse me? 2 weeks? 14 days? Starting today? But that's impossible. Mr. Thompson told me 30 days this morning. Sullivan adjusted his glasses with the cold efficiency of someone used to ruining people's days. There's been a reassessment of your default risk. Your situation has been classified as critical. The bank can no longer wait. Amelia laughed. But it was a borderline hysterical laugh. Critical? I didn't know poverty came with medical ratings. What's the next stage? Terminal? Mrs. Harper, I understand this is difficult. But difficult? She cut in, raising her voice. Mr. Sullivan, difficult is opening a jar of pickles without breaking a nail. Impossible is finding $15,000 in 2 weeks when I barely have 15 cents in my pocket. It's actually $15,300, he corrected, checking the paperwork. Oh, thank you for the precision. Amelia clapped her hands sarcastically. That helped so much. Now I know the exact amount of money I don't have. Sullivan sighed and held out the documents to her. These are the official papers. The auction will take place in 2 weeks at 10. 0 inches the morning in the town square. Amelia looked at the papers like they were poisonous snakes. And if I don't come up with the money, the property will be sold to cover the debt. Any remaining balance will be returned to you. Of course, she repeated bitterly, because everyone knows falling down houses go for sky-high prices. Sullivan closed his briefcase and adjusted his hat. I'm sorry, Mrs. Harper. It's just business. Just business, she murmured as she watched him walk away. To you, it's just business. To me, it's my whole life. Once he disappeared down the road, Amelia stepped into her house and dropped into a chair in the kitchen. She put her head in her hands and tried to think clearly, but her mind felt like a hurricane. 2 weeks, 14 days, 336 hours to come up with more money than she'd ever seen in her life. All right, Amelia, she said to herself, trying to stay focused. Let's make a list of options. She grabbed a pencil and an old piece of paper and started writing. Option 1, rob a bank. She paused, then crossed it out. Too risky, and I don't have a horse to escape on. Option 2, win the lottery. Another line through it. I'd need to buy a ticket first, and I don't even have money for that. Option 3, find buried treasure in the backyard. Cross that out too. If there were treasure back there, the cockroaches would have found it by now. Option 4, marry a rich man who magically shows up at my door. She stopped writing and stared at the paper. It wasn't exactly a rich man who had magically shown up at her door, but no, Amelia, she said out loud to herself, don't even think about it. Navajo's offer is absurd, indecent, impossible, and maybe it was her only chance. She stood up and started pacing around the small kitchen, talking like she was arguing her case in front of an invisible jury. Let's look at the facts, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Fact number 1. I need $15,000 in 2 weeks. Fact number 2. I don't even have $15. Fact number 3. Navajo Stormrider is offering way more than $15,000. She stopped and looked at the foggy mirror hanging on the wall. But what he's asking in return, that's, she couldn't even say the word out loud. It's a business arrangement, she said finally, trying to convince herself, like selling a cake or doing laundry, just more complicated. She began pacing again. And it's not like I'm some innocent maiden. I was married. I know how these things work. And he said he'd give me half of his land. Half? That's a fortune. She stopped again and looked into the mirror. But what kind of woman does that make me? What would people think? What would the pastor say? What would my mother say if she were alive? A knock at the door pulled her out of her thoughts. She opened it, half expecting another bank official with more bad news. But it was only Mrs. Larson, her nearest neighbor, holding an apple pie. Hi, dear, said the older woman with a warm smile. I made too much pie and thought I'd share. Mrs. Larson, you're an angel, Amelia replied, accepting the pie. Just when I needed something sweet to soften a very bitter day. Trouble with the bank again? Worse. I've got 2 weeks now instead of a month. Mrs. Larson shook her head sympathetically. Those bankers have no heart. But you'll figure it out. Dear, you always do. After her neighbor left, Amelia stood at the door holding the pie, gazing toward the horizon where the hills faded into the distance. The next 3 days were the longest of Amelia's life. She woke up thinking about Navajo's offer, ate lunch with his words replaying in her head, and went to bed with that proposal, echoing like a clanging bell. On the morning of the second day, she decided to seek out Father Daniels at the church. If anyone could give her a clear-headed opinion on this impossible situation, it would be him. Father, she said, finding him arranging the altar flowers, I need spiritual guidance. Of course, my child. What is it about? Amelia hesitated. How could she explain this without sounding completely out of her mind? Let's say, hypothetically, someone received a business proposal that would solve all of her financial problems, but it involved personal commitments. The priest frowned. What kind of personal commitments? Well, the kind that usually happen between a husband and wife, but not exactly a traditional marriage. Father Daniels nearly knocked over the flower vase. Amelia Harper, what are you even thinking? Desperation, mostly, she answered with raw honesty. The bank's taking my house in less than 2 weeks. Father, I've tried everything. Not everything? Did you try asking the congregation for help? I did yesterday. I offered to clean for the church ladies for a whole year in exchange for a loan. Mrs. Jenkins said she already has a maid. Mrs. Wallace said she'd pray for me. And Mrs. Bennett suggested I sell my pig because at least then I'd get something useful out of him. The priest sighed. And your mother's piano? It's a beautiful piece. I tried selling it yesterday. Mr. Peterson at the music store said player pianos are out of style and take up too much space. He offered $20 for it. $20 is better than nothing. Father, I need $15,000. $20 won't even cover the gas to take the piano into town. The priest sat down in the first pew and motioned for her to sit beside him. My child, sometimes God puts us in difficult situations to test our faith. Well, then he must think I'm much stronger than I really am, Amelia replied, because this test is starting to feel like medieval torture. On the third day, Amelia decided to make one last attempt. She put on her best dress, brushed her hair carefully, and went to the bank to speak with Mr. Thompson. One final time. Mr. Thompson, she said, sitting across from him with all the dignity she could gather, I came to make an offer. Mrs. Harper, we've already discussed this. The deadline is, I know the deadline, but hear my proposal first. How about I work for the bank for free for 5 years? Cleaning, organizing, making coffee, whatever you need. In return, you restructure my debt. Mr. Thompson didn't even look up from his papers. Impossible. The bank isn't a charity. Then how about 10 years? Mrs. Harper, please. We have procedures to follow. Amelia leaned forward over the desk. Mr. Thompson, do you have children? I do. Then imagine one of them in my situation. What would you do? For the first time, Thompson looked her straight in the eyes. I'd find the money. And if you couldn't? There's always a way. Mrs. Harper, there's always a way. As she left the bank, Amelia literally bumped into Navajo on the main street. She'd been staring at the ground, lost in thought, when she ran straight into his broad chest. Sorry, I didn't see, she started. Then stopped when she recognized him. Oh, it's you. It's me, Navajo said, steadying her by the shoulders. How's the decision coming? What decision? She asked, pretending not to understand. You know exactly what decision. Amelia crossed her arms and looked him square in the eyes. Well, since you asked, I've spent the last 3 days trying every possible alternative so I wouldn't have to even consider your crazy offer. And how did that go? Huge success, she said sarcastically. The priest told me to have faith. The church ladies offered prayers instead of money. And Mr. Thompson told me there's always a way without giving me any clue what that way might be. Navajo almost smiled. So, you're here by your own choice. I'm here because I tripped. Literally. And now I'm stuck in a conversation with a man who makes indecent proposals to desperate women. It wasn't indecent. It was practical. Oh, right. Me apologies. A perfectly civilized and modern proposal. I bet it's all the rage among the wealthy these days, collecting children like stamps. Navajo studied her for a moment, and Amelia had the impression he was trying not to laugh. You don't lower your head even when you're losing. And you don't back off even when you're being mocked. Then we're alike. We're complete opposites. She corrected him. You have money. I have debt. You have land. I have leaks. You make impossible offers. I have to accept impossible offers. You don't have to accept anything. No. Amelia gave a bitter laugh. Then tell me, Mr. Stormrider, where else is a broke widow going to find $15,000 in 10 days? I don't know. Exactly. Neither do I. Navajo went quiet for a moment, watching the street traffic. Why not just say yes? Because I still have a little pride, and because your offer is insane, but you're considering it. I'm also considering jumping off a bridge, but that doesn't mean I'll do it. This time, Navajo actually smiled, a small but genuine smile. The bridge is on the other side of town. Thanks for the geography lesson, she replied. But she was almost smiling, too. They parted ways there, each heading off in a different direction. But something had shifted between them. The hostility had given way to a kind of mutual respect, like two opponents who had recognized each other's strength. 2 days later, Amelia was back at Navajo's ranch. This time, she hadn't dressed up. She was covered in dust from the road, her hair a mess, her eyes swollen from too much thinking and crying. But there was something different in her posture, a kind of fierce determination that hadn't been there before. Navajo saw her coming from the porch and walked down the steps to meet her halfway. You came back, he said without surprise. I did, she confirmed, stopping a few feet away. But I'm not saying yes yet. I want to hear your terms, all of them, and I want to know the real reason behind this crazy offer. Navajo nodded slowly. Come in. Let's talk. She sat in the chair he offered, folded her hands in her lap, and looked him straight in the eye. All right, Mr. Stormrider, I want the truth now. Why does a man like you have to make an offer like this just to have a child? Navajo poured himself a glass of water and offered one to her. She declined with a gesture. It's a long story. I've got time. Actually, I've got nothing but time since. In a week I'll probably be living under a bridge. He sat in the chair across from her and was quiet for a moment, like he was deciding where to begin. My father was Apache. My mother was the daughter of settlers. I grew up between two worlds and never fully belonged to either. That explains the sunny personality, Amelia commented dryly. Navajo ignored the sarcasm and kept going. When I made money from cattle and mining, I bought this land legally, documented, paid with my own money. But there are groups that question my right to own it because I'm Apache. They claim the land should belong to real Americans. He made air quotes. Simon Decker is the leader of that group. He's been trying to push me out for years by any means necessary. Amelia frowned. And how does a child fix that? A legal heir, born on American soil to an American mother, makes the ownership indisputable. It's a legal shield. Even Decker can't get past. I see, she said, processing. So I'd be like a walking insurance policy. That's not how I see it. No? Then how do you see it? Navajo looked her straight in the eye. As a partnership, you need financial security. I need an heir. We both get something out of it. Amelia leaned forward. All right, let's hear your conditions. And I want everything clear from the start. I don't want to find out anything ugly later. First condition, Navajo said, his tone more formal now. The child will be my legal heir with full rights to the property. Fine. Second, you'll have complete freedom to come and go, but you'll need to live here. This is the legal residence. Amelia considered that define complete freedom. You can visit town, have guests, do as you wish. You just can't set up residence anywhere else while the agreement is in effect. And how long is the agreement in effect? Until the child turns 18. 18 years? Amelia stood up. You expect me to spend the next 18 years of my life stuck here? Not stuck. There's a difference. Maybe for you. What's the third condition? Navajo hesitated for a moment. The marriage will be real. Official. With signed and registered papers. Amelia slowly sat back down. A real marriage? Yes. With all the implications that come with it. Yes. She stayed silent for a long moment, staring down at her hands. All right. Now, my conditions. Navajo nodded. First, I want to be treated with respect, always. If you mistreat me in front of the staff, people in town, or anyone else, the agreement ends right then and there. Agreed. Second, I want to have a say in decisions involving the property and the child. I'm not a servant. I'm a partner. Agreed. Third, I will never be treated like your possession. I can have my own opinions, express how I feel, and disagree with you when I think it's necessary. Agreed. And fourth, she looked him straight in the eye. If at any point you decide you want a second wife or a mistress or anything like that, you tell me first, so I can leave with dignity. Navajo frowned. Why would I want that? Rich men always want that sooner or later. It's just a precaution. I won't want that. How can you be sure? Because I'm not that kind of man. Amelia studied him for a moment, trying to see if he meant it. All right, those are my conditions. Navajo stood and walked to a desk in the corner of the room. He pulled out some papers and a pen. I'll write up the agreement now. Everything in writing, signed and witnessed. While he wrote, Amelia walked around the room, looking at the objects. There were a few books on the shelves, all in English, some on farming and livestock, others on business law. 1 or 2 framed photos showed Arizona landscapes, no family pictures. She noted, I don't have a family. Everyone has family. Mine is gone. His tone made it clear she shouldn't ask more. 20 minutes later, Navajo finished writing and handed her the papers. Amelia read everything twice, checking each clause carefully. Looks fair, she said at last. So, we have a deal. Amelia took a deep breath. This was it. The final decision. She could get up and leave, accept poverty and the loss of her home as the life she'd been dealt. Or she could sign those papers and step into the craziest adventure of her life. We have a deal, she said, picking up the pen. She signed her name in firm handwriting without hesitation. Navajo did the same. When they finished, he placed one copy in the desk and handed the other to her. There, our business partners and future spouses, she added, trying to sound casual. And future spouses, he repeated. For a moment, they looked at each other in silence. There was something in Navajo's eyes that Amelia couldn't quite read. It wasn't triumph or relief. It was something deeper, more complex. Before they could say anything else, urgent knocking at the door broke the moment. Navajo frowned and went to open it. It was Caleb, one of the ranch hands, his face red from running. Boss, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. What is it? Caleb glanced at Amelia, hesitant. You can speak, Navajo said. She's part of the family now. It's about Mrs. Harper. Actually, I just got back from town and found out the bank sold her debt. Amelia felt the blood drain from her face. Sold it to who? To Simon Decker. Ma'am, he owns your debt now. The silence that followed was so heavy it felt solid. Amelia's legs gave way, and she leaned on the table. Decker? Navajo murmured, his eyes darkening. Does that mean something? Amelia asked. Though his tone already told her it meant a lot. It means our agreement just became a lot more dangerous than I thought. Amelia just stared at him, afraid. That night, Amelia woke in the middle of the night to a strange smell in the air. Still half asleep in the guest room Navajo had prepared for her, it took her a few seconds to recognize it. Smoke. She jumped out of bed and ran to the window. What she saw made her blood run cold. The main barn was engulfed in orange flames, rising into the sky like desperate fingers trying to claw at the stars. Navajo! She screamed, running from the room in her nightgown, barefoot. Fire! The barn's on fire. She stumbled down the stairs, threw open the front door, and ran toward the fire. Navajo was already there, along with Caleb and 2 other workers, forming a desperate bucket line. Get back in the house. Navajo yelled when he saw her coming. "It's dangerous. What about the animals?" she shouted back, pointing at the barn. "There are horses in there. We've let most of them out already." But Amelia could still hear the desperate whinnies coming from inside the burning structure. Without a second thought, she grabbed a cloth, soaked it at the nearest water pump, and tied it around her face. "Amelia, no." Navajo dropped the buckets and ran after her, but she had already disappeared through the barn's side door. Inside, the heat was unbearable. The thick smoke burned her eyes and made it hard to breathe. Amelia followed the sound of the panicked animals. She found 2 horses trapped at the back, locked in their stalls, wild with fear. "Easy, sweethearts," she said, coughing, trying to keep her voice calm as she opened the first stall. "Auntie Amelia's getting you out of here." The first horse, a nervous chestnut, reared up when she opened the door. Amelia threw herself to the side, avoiding the hooves by just a few inches. "I know you're scared, honey, but if you trample me, we're both going to end up grilled." She managed to guide the horse to the exit. The second horse, a black mare, was calmer but still clearly frightened. Amelia gave her a quick pat on the neck. "Come on, girl. Time to get out of this oven." When she finally got out of the barn with the mare, Navajo grabbed her by the shoulders, his face a mix of relief and fury. "You're completely out of your mind. You could have died, but I didn't," she said, coughing and wiping her teary eyes. "And neither did the horses. Everybody wins." "Wins?" Navajo looked at her like she'd gone crazy. "You're covered in soot, scratched up, and you smell like a chimney." Amelia looked down and saw he was right. Her hands were black with smoke, her nightgown was torn in places, and a cut on her left arm was bleeding. "Well, at least I match the decor now," she said, pointing toward the still smoking barn. "Fire survivor chic is in this season." For the first time since they'd met, Navajo laughed a full, genuine laugh that echoed across the ranch. "What's so funny?" Amelia asked, confused but smiling, too. "You," he said, shaking his head. "You just risked your life for 2 horses that aren't even yours. You look like you walked out of a fireplace, and you're cracking jokes." "It's my coping mechanism," she explained, wiping more soot from her face. "When life gets too serious, I turn into a comedian. It's that or a nervous breakdown, and breakdowns are way less fun." For the next 2 hours, they worked together to fully put out the fire and assess the damage. The barn was gone, but the animals were safe, and the fire hadn't spread to other buildings. As the sun began to rise, Navajo and Caleb searched through the still smoldering debris. That's when Caleb found something. "Boss, come take a look at this." Navajo walked over, and Caleb pointed to a partially melted glass bottle among the charred wood. Even with all the fire, it still smelled like kerosene. "Someone set this," Navajo said, his voice tight with restrained anger. "Who would do that?" Amelia asked, walking up after washing and changing clothes. "Not hard to guess," Navajo replied, looking toward the hills. "Someone who wants to see me fail. That Decker guy, probably, or someone working for him." Amelia crossed her arms, still smelling the smoke in her hair. "Well, then he got what he wanted. The barn's toast. We'll rebuild," Navajo said firmly. Amelia looked at the 2 men and suddenly had an idea. "What if we don't rebuild the same? What if we build something better?" Navajo looked at her, curious. "Better how?" "Bigger. Safer. With a fire system. If we have enemies trying to burn our stuff, we'd better be ready." "Our stuff," Navajo repeated. "Well, technically, I'm a partner in this business now, right? And if there's one thing I've learned from being poor, it's that sometimes you have to rebuild better than before, just out of sheer stubbornness." Navajo studied her for a moment, and Amelia saw that same unreadable expression cross his face again. "Do you have any idea how to do that?" "A few. Nothing fancy, but practical. George might have left me in debt, but he also taught me a few things about construction." They were discussing rebuild options when Caleb came running from the main house. "Boss, there's a letter on the front door. Someone must have left it during the fire." Navajo took the envelope. No sender, no stamp, just to the widow, written in uneven handwriting. "It's for me," Amelia said, reaching out. She opened the envelope and read the short message in silence. Her face gradually went pale. "What does it say?" Navajo asked. Amelia handed him the paper. The message was simple and direct. Leave his life or die. Navajo crumpled the paper in his hand, his knuckles turning white. This has gone too far. It was a warning, Amelia said, trying to keep her voice calm, though her heart was racing. The question is, from who? Doesn't matter who. What matters is that now you're in danger because of me. Amelia looked at the barn's remains, then at the crumpled letter in Navajo's hand, and finally at the man who had become her husband on paper. You know what, Navajo, she said, surprised by how steady her voice was. I'm already about to lose my house, my financial security, and I nearly turned into barbecue trying to save your horses. If someone thinks an anonymous little note is going to scare me now, they're dead wrong. Navajo looked at her for a long moment, and for the first time since they met, Amelia saw something like admiration in his eyes. The morning after the fire, Navajo walked into the kitchen with a determined look, one Amelia was already starting to recognize as trouble. You need to leave, he said bluntly as she was making coffee. Amelia froze mid-pour and looked at him like he just suggested she fly to the moon. Leave and go. Where, exactly? Anywhere. A relative's house? Another town, just far from here. Oh, of course, she said, stirring the coffee deliberately, because I have so many relatives fighting to take me in and people lining up to offer me work in other towns. Amelia, I'm serious. After that letter yesterday, Navajo, she turned to face him, hands on her hips. I'm already neck-deep in this mess. I'm not running now like some scared rabbit. It's not running. It's protecting yourself. No, it is running, and I've never run from anything in my life. I'm not starting now. Navajo sighed and ran a hand through his hair. You don't understand the danger. I understand perfectly, she interrupted. Someone burned down your barn, sent me a death threat, and probably has more nasty surprises planned. But I also understand that I'm staying and helping you, because that's what partners do. Partners? You said it yourself. We're business partners now, and partners don't abandon ship when things get hard. Navajo studied her for a long moment. Why are you doing this? Because she poured the coffee into 2 cups. For the first time in a long while, I feel like I can actually make a difference in something, and honestly, I've already lost everything. I've got nothing left to lose. You have your life. I do, and I intend to use it. Well, Navajo took the cup she offered and sipped it, thoughtful. If you're staying, you need to know how to defend yourself. Great. What do you suggest? Wrestling classes? Because I've fought with some stubborn chickens before. I've got experience. I'll teach you to shoot and to ride better. And some tracking basics. Amelia raised her eyebrows. Tracking? I'm going to be a scout now? You're going to be someone who knows when they're being followed. After breakfast, Amelia announced she needed to return to her old house to grab some clothes and personal items. And my pig, she added. Your what? My pet pig. Baxter. He thinks he's a dog, but I haven't been able to convince him otherwise. Navajo looked at her like she was speaking a foreign language. You have a pig who thinks he's a dog. I do. And no, before you ask, he doesn't bark, but he growls at strangers and sniffs everything. Very protective. For the first time since the fire, Navajo smiled. Of course. Let's go get your pig dog. The trip to Amelia's old home was eye-opening. Navajo watched her gather her few belongings, some clothes, books, the wedding photo with George, and a small cloth doll that had belonged to her mother. Baxter, the pig in question, greeted Navajo with suspicion, grunting and placing himself between Amelia and the stranger. Baxter, behave, Amelia said. This is Navajo. He's well. It's complicated. But he's on our team now. The pig looked up at her like he completely understood how complicated things were. Back at the ranch, Navajo started Amelia's training right away. The first archery lessons were a disaster. Aim for the center of the target, Navajo said, standing behind her to correct her stance. I am aiming, Amelia replied, focused. Then why did the arrow end up in the tree behind the target? Maybe the tree was plotting against me. On her third try, she hit the target barely. Progress, she cheered. In a few years, I might even hit the center. The riding lessons went slightly better. Amelia already knew how to ride, but Navajo taught her how to ride faster and safer on rough terrain. It was during one of those lessons that the comical accident happened. Navajo was demonstrating how to take a sharp turn and didn't see the water bucket sitting in the middle of the yard. The horse dodged it, but Navajo didn't. He went flying over the saddle and landed face first in the bucket. Amelia laughed so hard, she almost fell off her own horse. "Very graceful," she said, trying to stop laughing as Navajo got up, dripping wet, and with his dignity slightly bruised. "Accidents happen," he muttered, wringing water out of his hair. "Of course, especially when you don't watch where you're going. Should I suggest some bucket avoidance lessons?" But it was that evening, sitting on the porch under the moonlight, that the real connection happened. Navajo had been quiet during dinner, lost in thought. "What's bothering you?" Amelia finally asked. Navajo was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "I had a family once," he said at last. "An Apache wife, Sarah, and a son, Samuel. He'd be 7 now." Amelia felt her heart tighten. "What happened?" "Fever took them both the same winter 5 years ago." "I'm sorry. Since then, I haven't been able to look at another woman. Couldn't even think about starting another family." Amelia waited, sensing there was more. "But now the government's putting pressure on me, saying if I don't have American heirs, the land could be redistributed. Doesn't matter how much money I have, how many legal deals I make. To them, I'm still just an Apache who shouldn't own American land. That's why the proposal," Amelia said. "Understanding now, that's why the proposal. I thought it would be simple, practical, but..." Navajo looked straight at her. "But you're not simple or practical." Amelia looked at him and said, "I need to get some sleep." The next day, Amelia went into town to get supplies for rebuilding the barn. Navajo had offered to go with her, but she insisted on going alone. "I need to show I'm not afraid," she said. "Besides, it's broad daylight. What could happen?" She found out exactly what could happen on the way back, when 3 masked men jumped out from the bushes along the road. "Hand over the bag, lady," one of them said, pointing a knife at her. "It's just money for nails and boards," Amelia replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "We want the money," said another, "and for you to stay away from the Apache." "And if I say no?" The man with the knife stepped closer. "You won't say no." That's when the arrows started flying. The first hit the ground right in front of the leader's feet. The second knocked the knife from his hand. The third was clearly a final warning. "Leave." Navajo's voice echoed from the nearby hill. "Now." The 3 men looked around, trying to spot where the arrows had come from, and quickly decided not to take their chances. They ran off. Navajo rode down the hill on his horse, bow still in hand, more arrows ready. "Are you hurt?" he asked, jumping off his horse. "No," Amelia said, though her legs were shaking. "Did I make it back in one piece?" "How did you know where I was?" "I never stopped knowing where you were," he said, putting the bow away. "Not since yesterday." Amelia looked at him, her heart still pounding, not just from fear. For the first time since they met, she didn't see Navajo as a stranger who had made her a business offer, but as a man who had risked everything to protect her. "Thank you," she said simply. "Always," he replied. And in that moment, under the Arizona sun, they both knew something had changed between them. Something that had nothing to do with contracts or business arrangements. Back at the ranch, Navajo insisted on checking Amelia for injuries. She protested that she was fine, but he didn't listen. "Sit down," he said, pointing to a kitchen chair. "Navajo, I'm fine. It was just a scare." "Sit down," he repeated in that tone that allowed no argument. Amelia sighed and obeyed. Navajo brought over a bowl of warm water and clean cloths and began examining her hands and arms for cuts or scrapes. "You've got a cut here," he said, gently touching a small wound on her wrist. "Probably from when you pulled back from the knife." "Just a scratch," she said, watching him carefully clean it. "You're better than Dr. Andrews from town. At least your hands don't shake, and you don't smell like whiskey." Navajo didn't reply to her comment. Fully focused on his task, his hands were steady but surprisingly gentle. Amelia found herself watching his face as he worked the lines of focus around his eyes, the way he bit lightly on his lower lip when concentrating. "All done," he said, finishing the bandage. "It won't leave a scar." "What a shame," she joked. I was going to tell everyone it came from an epic fight with outlaws. You don't need to make up stories to look brave, he said, putting the supplies away. What you did today already proved that. That night, neither of them could sleep. Amelia stepped out onto the porch and found Navajo already there, sitting on the steps, staring at the stars. Can't sleep either? She asked, sitting beside him. No. Thinking about what happened today, among other things, they sat in silence for a few minutes, looking out at the vast Arizona night sky. The moon was nearly full, casting a soft silver light over the land. Navajo, Amelia said finally, turning to look at him. Can I ask you something? You can. Do you still think this is just a contract? The question hung in the air between them. Navajo turned to her, and Amelia saw something shift in his eyes, his guard lowering, the formality fading. Instead of answering with words, he leaned in slowly. He gave her time to pull away, to protest, to remind him of their agreement, but Amelia did none of that. When Navajo's lips touched hers, it was like something that had been building for weeks finally broke free. The kiss started slow, tentative, as if he was testing whether it was welcome. But when Amelia didn't pull back, when her hands moved up to gently touch his face, the hesitation disappeared. The kiss deepened, full of all the tension they hadn't spoken about, all the fear from the day, and all the attraction they'd been denying. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Amelia, Navajo murmured, his forehead resting against hers. I know, she said, understanding what he couldn't say. I didn't expect it either. He looked at her for a long moment, like he was memorizing her face. I don't want this to be just a contract, he admitted quietly. Then don't let it be, she said simply. Later that night, when Amelia woke in Navajo's room with early morning light filtering through the curtains, a wave of panic hit her. What had they done? How would this change everything between them? Navajo was sleeping beside her, one arm protectively around her waist. She watched him for a moment, noticing how much younger he looked in sleep, how much softer. Carefully, so as not to wake him, she slipped out of bed and returned to her own room. In the days that followed, both acted as if nothing had happened. Navajo returned to being formal and distant, talking only about practical things like the barn reconstruction and ranch security. Amelia responded in kind, keeping the conversation strictly professional, but the way they looked at each other, when they thought the other wasn't watching, told a different story. There was a constant awareness of the other's presence, an electric tension that filled the air whenever they were in the same room. Are you going into town today? Navajo asked one morning as they drank coffee in awkward silence. I am. I need more supplies for the barn, Amelia said without looking up from her cup. Caleb can go. I'd rather go myself. After what happened, I need to prove I won't hide. She interrupted, finally looking at him. Besides, you'll be following me from a distance anyway, won't you? Navajo didn't deny it. The following week settled into a strange rhythm. During the day, they worked side by side rebuilding the ranch, discussing strategy, pretending to be nothing more than business partners fulfilling an agreement. At night, they avoided being alone, Navajo always finding work to do in his office, Amelia busying herself in the kitchen. But about 3 weeks later, Amelia started to notice something different. First, it was the unusual fatigue. She, who had always had plenty of energy, now found herself exhausted by the end of the day. Then came the morning nausea, which she first blamed on Navajo's strong coffee, but when she realized she was late, everything clicked. This can't be, she whispered, counting the days on the kitchen calendar for the third time. This can't be, but it could, and it probably was. 2 days later, Amelia quietly made her way to Dr. Andrews' office in town. The doctor was old and discreet, known for treating both Apaches and settlers without asking too many questions. Well, Mrs. Harper, said Dr. Andrews after the exam, adjusting his glasses with a warm smile. Or should I say, Mrs. Stormrider? Congratulations. You're pregnant. I'd say about a month along. Amelia froze on the exam table. Are you sure? Absolutely. A healthy baby, as far as I can tell. You'll need to start paying more attention to your diet and get plenty of rest. The ride back to the ranch passed in a haze. Amelia could barely process it. A baby. She was carrying Navajo's child. This wasn't supposed to happen so fast. Their agreement was practical, calculated. It wasn't supposed to involve real feelings, passionate nights, or consequences that came this quickly. When she got home, she found Navajo fixing the pasture fence. He looked up as she approached, and something in her expression must have told him she had news. "Amelia, what is it?" She stopped a few steps from him, her hands trembling slightly. "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" She took a deep breath, searching for courage. "I'm pregnant." The hammer slipped from Navajo's hand and hit the ground with a dull thud. He stared at her for a long moment, as if unsure he'd heard right. "Pregnant?" he repeated slowly. "Yes." For a brief second, Amelia saw something flicker in his eyes. Real joy. Maybe even hope. But almost immediately, his expression shifted back into that formal mask. "Well," he said, picking up the hammer, "that means I'll keep my part of the agreement. That's all you have to say?" "What else is there to say?" Amelia felt like she'd just been slapped. After everything they had shared, he still saw this as just business. "Nothing, I guess," she said, turning to walk away. "Amelia." She stopped, but didn't turn back. "I'll take care of you. Like I promised." "I know you will," she said, her voice flat. "After all, it's part of the deal." And with that, she went into the house, leaving Navajo alone with his thoughts and the realization that he had gotten exactly what he wanted, but might have lost something far more valuable in the process. The news of Amelia's pregnancy spread through Prescott like wildfire. In less than a week, the entire town knew that the widow Harper was expecting a child with the richest Apache in the region. Amelia found out the hard way, overhearing conversations that stopped abruptly when she walked by, and catching stares that followed her like poisoned arrows every time she went out in public. "Well, Baxter," she said to the pig, who was trotting beside her on a makeshift leash during their morning walk across the property, "looks like we're the talk of the town." "What an honor." Baxter grunted in response, nose pressed to a rock with intense interest. "You're right," Amelia agreed. "Rocks are far more interesting than the people in this town." It was the following Thursday, during a trip to the market, that Amelia had her first direct run-in with public opinion. Mrs. Jenkins, wife of the hardware store owner, was loudly chatting with two other women as Amelia entered. "Oh, she planned it all," Mrs. Jenkins was saying, making no effort to lower her voice. "A desperate widow, a rich man. It's not hard to see how these things happen. Such a shame," added Mrs. Wallace. "A Christian woman selling herself like that." Amelia walked up to the counter and smiled politely at Mr. Larson, the grocer. "Good morning, Mr. Larson. I need flour, sugar, and maybe some of that coarse salt over there," she said, pointing, "the kind folks use to keep away nosy old gossips." The three women fell silent. Mr. Larson tried to hide a smile. "Of course, Mrs. Stormrider. How much would you like?" "A lot," Amelia said loudly enough for the entire store to hear. "Apparently, there are way more nosy old gossips in town than I expected." Mrs. Jenkins turned red. "Well, I never." "Really?" Amelia turned to her with exaggerated interest. "So, you've never done anything questionable for money? How admirable. Must be nice being born rich and never having to make hard choices." "I wasn't born rich, you insolent girl." "Oh, my mistake," Amelia replied with mock humility. "Then you understand my situation perfectly. Good to know I can count on your Christian compassion." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving the woman speechless. Back at the ranch, Amelia found Navajo working on the fence near the south pasture. Baxter ran to him immediately, grunting cheerfully. The pig had decided Navajo was part of the family. "How was town?" Navajo asked, scratching behind Baxter's ears. "Fun," Amelia said as she unloaded the supplies. "I found out I'm apparently both a calculating opportunist and an innocent victim, depending on who's talking. And what did you say to that?" "I told them if getting pregnant by an Apache was my master plan to get rich, then they're seriously overestimating my planning skills. I mean, there are way easier ways to make money. like robbing banks or selling miracle elixirs. Navajo almost smiled. Nothing gets to you, does it? Of course things get to me, she said, picking up Baxter as he started chewing on her skirt. Baxter, stop eating my clothes. I'm not food. She looked back at Navajo. But I've learned that if you let people see you're shaken, they just stomp harder. That afternoon, Caleb came running from the barn with troubling news. Boss, there are 3 men in suits at the gate. Say they're lawyers. Navajo and Amelia exchanged a glance. Lawyers rarely brought good news. The 3 men stood in front of the main house like vultures circling a carcass. The leader, a tall, thin man with glasses too small for his face, held a leather briefcase. Mr. Stormrider, he said, I'm Walter Brooks, attorney representing Mr. Simon Decker. We have some documents to present to you. Navajo crossed his arms. What kind of documents? Documents challenging your legal right to this land, Brooks said, opening the case. We have records showing that part of this property originally belonged to the Decker family. Forged documents, Navajo replied without even looking. They're perfectly legal, sir, registered and notarized. Amelia stepped forward. And did these records magically appear after news of my pregnancy spread through town? Brooks adjusted his glasses, clearly uncomfortable. I'm not sure what you mean. Of course not, Amelia said dryly. Just a coincidence, right? That Mr. Decker suddenly cares about land ownership now, when Navajo's about to have a legal heir. Mr. Stormrider's legal matters and personal life are unrelated. Oh, sure. Just like oil and water or truth and lies. Navajo placed a hand on Amelia's shoulder. You can file your papers in court, he said to the men. But leave my land now. After the men left, Navajo stood quietly, watching the trail where they'd gone. Decker's getting desperate, he muttered. Is that good or bad? Bad. Desperate men do dangerous things. As if on cue, Caleb came running again 2 hours later, this time with even more alarming news. Boss, I was in town and overheard something at the saloon. There's a new guy asking around about you. What kind of questions? Your habits, where you go, what time you leave home. His name's Salazar, and he doesn't look like the curious type. Amelia felt a chill run down her spine. A hired gun? Judging by the way he wears his weapon, I'd say yes, ma'am. Navajo was quiet for a long moment. Caleb, I want you and the other men on guard through the night. 2-hour shifts. No one leaves the ranch alone. Yes, sir. That night, Amelia was saying goodnight to Baxter in the little pen Navajo had built for him when she heard footsteps behind her. Can't sleep either? She asked, not turning around. No. Navajo stepped up and leaned on the fence. Baxter grunted happily and waddled over, expecting attention. At least someone's happy, Amelia said, petting the pig. Baxter doesn't worry about hired guns, lawsuits, or town gossip. Must be nice living like that. It must. No expectations, no responsibilities, no one trying to kill you over land. They fell quiet, watching Baxter sniff through his food for the tastiest bits. Amelia, Navajo said at last. Yes? I'm sorry about all this. You didn't deserve to get dragged into this mess. Amelia turned to look at him. Navajo, I walked into this mess with my eyes open. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but you didn't know it would be dangerous. Maybe not. But now that I'm in it, I'm not going to run at the first sign of trouble. Why? Amelia paused, searching for the right words. Because for the first time in a long while, I feel like I'm fighting for something that actually matters. Even if it's messy, even if it's dangerous. Navajo looked at her for a long moment. And the baby? The baby will be born into a family that doesn't give up easily, Amelia said, resting a hand gently on her still flat belly. And on land that belongs to us by right. Us, Navajo repeated, like he was testing the weight of the word us, she confirmed, for better or worse, and as Baxter continued his careful inspection of the feed, both of them knew they'd crossed another line. They weren't just business partners anymore, or even occasional lovers. They were a family, and families protect each other. Amelia woke in the middle of the night to Baxter grunting nervously in his pen, and the ranch dogs barking like the world was ending. Still groggy, It took her a few seconds to realize this wasn't a false alarm. She jumped out of bed and ran to the window. In the darkness, she could see figures moving around the property like shadows come to life. "Navajo!" she shouted, running to his room. "There are people surrounding the ranch." She found Navajo already up, throwing on his clothes and checking his rifle. "How many did you see?" "I don't know, maybe 6 or 7. They're coming from all sides. Go back to your room and stay away from the windows," he ordered, loading the rifle. "Not a chance," Amelia said, folding her arms. "I didn't come all this way to watch from the window while you fight alone. Amelia, you're pregnant. It's too dangerous. And you think being alone in a room is safer? If they get inside, I'm a sitting duck." Navajo paused, knowing she was right. "Then stay close to me and do exactly what I say." "Deal." But first, she ran to the kitchen and came back holding a cast-iron skillet. Navajo stared at her in disbelief. "A frying pan? You never know," she said, testing its weight. "I've used this beauty to kill 3 rats and a rooster that attacked Baxter. It's a proven weapon." "Amelia, what? You've got your arrows. I've got my frying pan. We all have our specialties." The first gunshot shattered the living room window. Navajo pulled Amelia down behind the couch and fired back, aiming through the broken glass. "Salazar!" a voice shouted from outside. "We know you're in there. Come out, and maybe we'll spare the woman." "How polite," Amelia muttered. "I always appreciate a well-mannered assassin." "Quiet," Navajo whispered. "We don't have all night, Storm Rider," the voice shouted again. "Come out, or we're coming in." "You'll have to come in," Navajo yelled back. "I don't even go out for the newspaper." Then the real firefight began. Bullets tore through the house, smashing vases, ripping through walls, and making Baxter squeal angrily outside. "My pig!" Amelia gasped. "They're going to hurt Baxter." "Baxter's probably safer than we are right now," Navajo said, reloading. "At least he has a hiding spot." Amelia crawled over to the ammo box Navajo had left near the fireplace. "What do you need?" "Shells." "Blue box." She grabbed a handful and crawled back under another hail of gunfire. "Here," she said, handing him the ammo. "Amelia Harper Express delivery. We bring bullets straight to your gun during life-threatening situations." "Are you enjoying this?" Navajo asked, incredulous. While he reloaded, "I'm terrified," she admitted, "but making jokes helps me not pass out from fear." A loud bang at the front door told them the attackers were trying a new tactic. "They're trying to break down the door," Amelia whispered. "Caleb and the others should be coming from the barn," Navajo said. "We just have to hold on a little longer." Then the back door burst open with a crash. A tall man in a black hat with a scar running down half his face stepped in, guns in both hands. "Salazar, I presume," Amelia said, tightening her grip on the frying pan. "The lady has sharp instincts," the gunman said with a cruel smile. "Shame she won't live long enough to sharpen them." Navajo rose slowly, rifle aimed at Salazar. "Let her go. Your problem is with me. My problem's with whoever Decker pays me to kill," Salazar replied. "And he's paying extra for the widow." "Extra?" Amelia said, offended. "Should I feel flattered or insulted?" Salazar chuckled. "You've got goots, Mom." "Too bad guts don't stop bullets." What happened next was so fast Amelia could barely remember it clearly later. Salazar swung his pistols toward her. Navajo dove to the side, firing. Amelia, on instinct, hurled the frying pan with everything she had. The frying pan hit Salazar square in the forehead at the exact moment Navajo's bullet struck his shoulder. The gunman staggered, thrown off more by the shock of the skillet than by the pain. Navajo lunged at him, and the two men tumbled to the floor in a brutal struggle. Salazar was strong, but Navajo knew every inch of that house and used it to his advantage, shoving the man hard against the kitchen table. "Surrender!" Navajo shouted, finally managing to lock his arm around Salazar's neck and pin him down. All right, Salazar said, dropping his guns. "You win." Amelia scooped up the pistols and pushed them aside. Still holding the broken pieces of her skillet, "That was my favorite frying pan." She sighed. "I'm really going to miss it." "I'll buy you another one," Navajo promised, eyes never leaving Salazar. "It won't be the same. That one had a battle history. Navajo tied Salazar to a chair using ropes Amelia brought in from the barn. Outside, the gunfire had stopped. Apparently, Caleb and the other workers had arrived just in time to drive off the rest of the gang. "All right," Navajo said, sitting across from the bound gunman. "Who hired you? You already know the answer. I want to hear you say it." "Decker. Simon Decker." Amelia crossed her arms. "And how much is he paying you to kill us?" $1,000 per head. 1,000? Amelia looked genuinely offended. "Only 1,000? Navajo, our enemies really don't appreciate our value. What do you think we're worth?" Navajo asked, almost smiling. "At least 5,000 each." Salazar stared at them like they were crazy for debating prices while holding him hostage. "You two are weirder than I expected." "Thank you," Amelia replied. "I'll take that as a compliment." Navajo leaned in closer. "How did Decker know it would be tonight?" "What do you mean?" "You came at the perfect time with the right number of men, and you knew exactly how to surround the property. Someone gave you very detailed information." Salazar hesitated, and something shifted in his expression. "You've got a traitor among you," he said finally. The silence that followed was deafening. Amelia and Navajo looked at each other, the same realization hitting them both. "Who?" Navajo asked. "I don't know the name, but someone here is feeding Decker information. Someone who knows your routines, your schedule, your plans." Amelia felt a chill crawl down her spine. If there was a traitor on the ranch, it meant they were never truly safe. Every move they made was being watched, every plan reported. "I lied when I said you'd won," Salazar said, his smile dark. "You only won this battle. The war is far from over." Navajo clenched his fists. "And who is the traitor?" "That," Salazar said, "you'll have to figure out yourselves, but be careful. He's closer than you think." Amelia looked out the shattered window at the ranch hands approaching the house. Every familiar face suddenly looked suspicious. The danger hadn't passed. It had just become more dangerous because now the enemy had a familiar face and intimate access to their lives. The next morning, Navajo took Salazar to town in chains, escorted by Caleb and 2 other men. Sheriff Wilson, a middle-aged man with a graying mustache, received the prisoner with a mix of relief and concern. "Hired gun," Navajo explained. "He admitted Simon Decker paid him to kill us." "That's a serious accusation, Navajo," the sheriff said. "You have proof?" "I've got his confession and 6 witnesses who saw the attack on my property." "All right. I'll hold him here while we investigate." Back at the ranch, Amelia was determined to find out how Decker had gotten such precise information about their lives. Something was nagging at her, a suspicion she couldn't quite put into words. "Navajo," she said, finding him repairing the broken windows, "can I go back to my old house? I want to check some papers I left there." "You shouldn't go alone. I'll take Baxter for protection," she joked. "He may not look scary, but he makes plenty of noise when he's nervous." Navajo hesitated, then nodded. "Caleb will go with you. Don't take long." Amelia's small house looked even more run down after weeks of abandonment. She went straight to the cabinet where she kept her important documents: marriage papers, certificates, and the cursed bank promissory notes. "What exactly are you looking for, ma'am?" Caleb asked, standing guard at the door. "Something that shouldn't be here," Amelia murmured, flipping through the papers, something that she stopped. Among the bank documents were papers she didn't recognize. Small alterations. Scribbled numbers. Dates that didn't match her memory. "This is very strange," she said, comparing 2 documents side by side. "Caleb, do you know anything about numbers?" "A little." "Ma'am, look at this." She pointed to the promissory notes. "This one says my original debt was $12,000, but this other one, dated later, says $15,300. Caleb frowned. "Maybe it's interest." "No, the interest is listed separately. Someone changed the principal amount." Amelia kept examining the documents, growing more and more outraged. There were sloppy erasures, numbers written over other numbers, even a change to the original due date. That son of a she started, then corrected herself. "That disgraceful man, they forged my debt." "Who would do that?" "Only one person had full access to my bank records," Amelia said, eyes burning with anger. "Mr. Thompson. The ride back to the ranch was silent, Amelia simmering with fury. When they arrived, she found Navajo in the office reviewing the ranch accounts. "Navajo, you need to see this," she said, throwing the papers onto his desk. "Mr. Thompson forged my debt." Navajo looked through the documents, his expression growing darker with every page. "This is document fraud, a federal crime. And there's more," Amelia added, pulling up a chair. "If he forged my documents, he might have forged others, including information he passed to Decker about you." Navajo leaned back in his chair, taking it all in. "Thompson has access to everyone's accounts in this region. He'd know exactly what our land is worth, our financial habits, our vulnerabilities, and he was the one who kept telling me I'd find a way to get the money," Amelia said, "like he knew I'd end up making that deal with you. We need to confront him." "We will. But first, I'm going to do something I should have done a long time ago." "What?" Amelia gave him a smile. He was starting to recognize the kind that meant trouble for someone else. "I'm going to dress like a respectable lady of society because I want Mr. Thompson to see me coming from a mile away." An hour later, Amelia walked into the bank in her best dress, the one Navajo had insisted on buying for her the week before. Wearing the posture of a woman used to being treated with respect, Navajo walked beside her, equally well dressed, with a look that left no doubt about his purpose. "Mr. Thompson," Amelia said, approaching his desk with a smile just a little too sweet to be sincere, "I need some clarification on a few discrepancies in my documents." Thompson looked up from his paperwork and visibly paled at the sight of the couple. "Mrs. Stormrider." "Mr. Stormrider, what can I do for you?" Amelia calmly spread the papers across his desk. "Can you explain how my original $12,000 debt magically became $15,300? Well, there must be some mistake." "A mistake?" Navajo leaned over the desk. "Or deliberate fraude?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Thompson stammered, but his hands trembled as he sifted through the papers. "Mr. Thompson," Amelia said, her voice still sweet but now with steel underneath, "I may be poor, but I'm not stupid, and I may not have a formal education, but I can count, and," added Navajo, "we also have documents proving that you passed confidential information to Simon Decker, details about our finances, our schedules, our plans." Thompson started to sweat. "These are very serious accusations." "Oh, they are," Amelia said cheerfully, "almost as serious as forging bank documents and conspiring to steal land from innocent people." I never, Mr. Thompson." Navajo placed his hands firmly on the desk and leaned in. "You're going to cancel the sale of my wife's debt to Decker. You're going to restore the original $12,000 amount, and you're going to tell us exactly what information you gave him." "I can't. The bank has policies. The bank also has policies against forgery," Amelia pointed out, "and I imagine the sheriff would be very interested in these documents." There was a long silence. Finally, Thompson sighed and slumped in defeat. "Decker offered me $5,000, he admitted. "Said it was just for general business information." $5,000, Amelia repeated. "Well, now I am flattered. First $1,000 for my head. Now $5,000 for information about me. I must be rising in value." "What did you tell him?" Navajo asked. "Your usual times going to town. How many workers you had. The layout of the ranch you mentioned when applying for the reconstruction loan. The layout that made last night's attack possible." Thompson seemed to shrink in his chair. "I didn't know he was going to use it for that. I thought it was just business." "Mr. Thompson," Amelia said, leaning over the desk, "either you fix this mess right now, or I walk straight out of here to the sheriff, then to the local paper, and then I'll make sure every church lady in town hears about it. And considering half this bank's clients are church ladies, I imagine that would be very bad for business." All right, Thompson said quickly. "I'll cancel the sale. I'll restore the original amounts. Just, please don't get the authorities involved." "We haven't decided about that yet," Navajo said, "but it's a start." 2 hours later, Amelia walked out of the bank holding corrected paperwork and a canceled debt. For the first time in months, she truly felt victorious. "We did it," she said, almost not believing it. "We really did it." "You did it," Navajo corrected, It was your suspicion that uncovered all this. No? Amelia shook her head. We did it together. That evening, after a peaceful dinner with no outlaws or legal threats looming, Navajo found Amelia sitting by the fire, gently petting Baxter, who had decided her lap was his favorite place in the world. Amelia, he said, sitting down beside her, I have something to ask you. She looked at him and noticed something different in his expression, something softer, more open than she was used to seeing. What is it? Navajo took a deep breath, as if preparing to jump off a cliff. Marry me. Amelia blinked. We are married, remember? Paper signed, deal made, baby on the way. No. He shook his head. Marry me for real, not for an agreement, not out of necessity, by choice. Amelia's heart leapt in her chest. She looked at his face and, for the first time, truly saw the man behind all the defenses and formality. Navajo, I know we started this all wrong, he said, taking her hand. I know it's been complicated and messy, but somewhere along the way, this became real for me. You became real to me. Amelia felt tears sting her eyes. I thought it was already real, she said, squeezing his hand. It was. She smiled through the tears. We were just waiting for our hearts to catch up, and when Navajo kissed her there by the fire, with Baxter grunting his approval between them, Amelia knew she had finally found her place in the world. It wasn't just the ranch or financial security or even love. It was family. The true kind they had built together against all odds. 6 months later, the Storm Rider Ranch had become a sight to behold. The new barn didn't just replace the old one. It exceeded it in every way, larger, safer, and fitted with an irrigation system that made the neighbors jealous. Amelia had insisted on incorporating traditional Apache details into the modern architecture, creating a unique blend of cultures in harmony. See that fence there, she said to Dr. Andrews, who had come for his monthly visit to check on her pregnancy. Navajo said that geometric pattern was impossible. Took me 3 weeks to prove him wrong. And how are you feeling, my dear? The doctor asked, putting away his stethoscope. Like a very happy whale, Amelia replied, rubbing her round belly. This little girl seems to have inherited her father's stubbornness. She spends all night doing acrobatics in there. A girl? I'm sure of it. No boy would cause this much trouble before he's even born. Baxter, who had grown significantly and now weighed nearly 50 kilos, lay at her feet like a giant dog. The pig had become a local legend. Folks from town would sometimes stop by just to see the dog pig of the Storm Riders. It was on a warm September morning that the contractions started. Amelia was in the kitchen, trying to convince Baxter to stop stealing carrots from the vegetable basket. Baxter, for heaven's sake, she said, holding a carrot above her head. You're not a rabbit. And even if you were, you're already too fat. That's when the first contraction hit her strong, sudden. She had to brace herself on the kitchen table. Navajo, she shouted. I think it's time. Navajo came running from the parlor, saw her expression, and immediately panicked. What do I do? Where do we go? Do I need to get the doctor? Hot water? Why do they always say hot water? Navajo, Amelia said, breathing deeply through another contraction. Breathe. One of us has to stay calm. And clearly it won't be me. The labor lasted 8 hours. 8 hours during which Navajo paced the room like a caged animal. Caleb tried and failed to keep him company. And Baxter stood guard at the bedroom door, grunting quietly. Every time Amelia groaned. At least the pig is calmer than you, Caleb observed. The pig isn't waiting on his firstborn, Navajo shot back. Technically, neither are you, Caleb pointed out. Amelia is the one giving birth. Navajo gave him a look that made Caleb decide it was best to stay quiet. Finally, just as the sun began to set, a strong, indignant cry echoed from the bedroom. Doctor. Andrew stepped out a few minutes later with a wide smile. Congratulations, Navajo. You have a beautiful, healthy baby girl. A daughter, Navajo repeated, as if testing how the word sounded, and Amelia wants to see you. Navajo walked into the room and found Amelia, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle that looked like it contained the most precious thing in the world. Come meet your daughter, she said, smiling. Navajo approached hesitantly and looked down at the small red face. The baby had his slightly almond-shaped eyes, but Amelia's small, upturned nose. "She's," he began, but his voice cracked. "Beautiful, perfect, future terror of this ranch." Amelia offered. "All of the above," he said, gently touching one of the tiny hands. "What should we name her?" "How about Grace?" Navajo suggested, "because that's what you gave me." "Grace. Grace Stormrider." Amelia tested. "I like it. It's strong." In the weeks that followed, word of Navajo's daughter spread through town, but this time, the reaction was different. The respect the couple had earned through their struggles had shifted public opinion. "Have you heard about the Stormrider baby?" Mrs. Jenkins gossiped at the market. "I heard she's absolutely precious, Mrs. Wallace replied, "and after everything they've been through, they deserve that happiness." Who would have thought the unlucky widow would become one of the luckiest women in the territory? Noted Mrs. Bennett. Amelia overheard that remark during a trip to town and couldn't help but laugh. "Lucky," she said to Mr. Larson, the shopkeeper. "Mr. Larson, if surviving arson, gunman, and a husband who panics at the word labor is luck, then yes, I'm truly blessed." 3 months after Grace's birth, Navajo surprised Amelia with an announcement. "I want to renew our vows," he said one morning over coffee. "Renew? We just got married not long ago." "No. We made a business deal not long ago. I want a real wedding, with guests, with you in a white dress, and no contracts involved." Amelia looked at him over her coffee cup, trying not to smile. "Navajo Stormrider, are you proposing again?" "I am, even though you're stubborn, opinionated, and have a pet pig that weighs more than some horses, especially because of that. Then I accept," she said, "on one condition." "What is it?" "Baxter gets to be our ring bearer." The ceremony took place on a Sunday in December, under a sunset that painted the Arizona sky in shades of gold and red. The ranch was decorated with wildflowers and colorful ribbons. Guests came from all over, some out of curiosity, others out of genuine affection for the couple. Amelia wore a simple but elegant white dress and carried Grace in her arms during the ceremony. Navajo stood beside her, more nervous than he'd been in any gunfight. "Navajo Stormrider," said Father Daniels, "do you take Amelia as your wife, to love and protect her in wealth and poverty, in sickness and in health?" "I do." "Amelia Harper Stormrider, do you take Navajo as your husband, to love and support him in joy and sorrow, through good times and bad?" "I do," she said, looking straight into Navajo's eyes, "and I promise to try not to criticize your cooking skills too often." Laughter from the crowd broke the solemn moment, and even Navajo smiled. When it was time for personal vows, Navajo took a deep breath. "Amelia, you didn't just give me a daughter. You gave me Grace. You gave me a family. You gave me a reason to build something that will last for generations." "And you," she replied, her voice thick with emotion, "you gave me a home, not just this land, but a place I belong, a place where I can be myself with all my quirks and my stubborn pig." When the priest declared them husband and wife again, the celebration that followed lasted late into the night. Children ran between the tables. Music filled the air, and even Baxter joined in, wearing a bow tie that Amelia had insisted he wear. "He's better dressed than half the guests," Navajo said, watching the pig greet visitors with polite little grunts. Baxter always had class. Amelia defended, he just didn't like to show it. Later, after the last guests had gone and Grace was peacefully asleep in her crib, Amelia sat on the porch with Navajo. The land stretched out in front of them, bathed in the light of the full moon. "We did it," she said simply. "Did what?" "Everything. The ranch is thriving. We have a healthy daughter. The town respects us. Even Decker gave up after Salazar went to jail. And most importantly," Navajo said, pulling her close, "we have each other." Amelia looked out at the land that was now truly hers, not because of a contract or a deal, but because of love and hard work. She looked at the man beside her, who had once been a stranger with an impossible offer, and had become her partner in everything. "You know," she said, leaning on his shoulder, "when you made that crazy proposal, I thought you were desperate. I was. and I thought it was the worst idea in the world. It was, but sometimes she smiled. The worst ideas turn out to be the best decisions, and there, under the Arizona stars, with their daughter asleep inside and Baxter snoring happily in his pen, Amelia knew she had found exactly what she didn't even know she was looking for: a family, a home, and a love that had grown from the most unlikely circumstances into the truest, most real